again, so much of life, like I've mentioned, is hard. Maybe doing the right thing sometimes is hard. So I really believe in showing up, right? It's not always going to be perfect, but again, if you show up every day for your wife, for your kids, that is a very admirable thing in my mind. Do I need to know? Should I know ahead of time what these random questions are?
Well, I am filtering them because a few of them are not suitable for our podcast audience. My kids listen to this, so I have to be a little bit wary of what I'm going to ask. But maybe that's a good way to start. We've been recording this whole time, but I'll edit out the other stuff.
Shoot.
But because there are some, I think, important things that I do want to get to, we'll kind of scatter these random ones in and out to help move it along. But
works for me.
For those who are just jumping in here, Taylor Brown, awesome person. I hated him in high school because we were at rival high schools and we played the same sport against each other. Very similar games, I would say, in that I was a 3-point shooter, you're a 3-point shooter, and so that's how I know you. So it was cool to meet you in another setting other than just.
You forgot the straight-legged 3-point shooter.
Straight-legged
couldn't do much more than that.
Lift. A lot of great battles against Alta, though. I mean, and Parker has gone on to do great things. It's funny because my mom videoed every game of me growing up, like Little League, not just basketball, any sport, just videoed everything. And then my parents got divorced in high school, and so she kept the tapes as a way to stick it to my dad, of like. In a way of like these, and she had every reason to. She did that. She took the time, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So those tapes were lost for years. And then at some point she gave them to my brother. He moves. And as he's moving into this new house, he's like, hey, I have this box full of your stuff. There's like pictures, random things. Will you just come take it? And so I'm like, yeah, sure. And it's this box of all of these tapes. So I converted them all to digital. So I have several of our games. If you ever want to go back and relive the glory days.
Oh, man, the glory days.
Buzzer beaters against us. And
I do remember that game. That was a fun game.
All of that. But you're awesome. Thanks for being here. I want to start and eventually get to what you're doing with your life because I think it's awesome. But I also have some questions from somebody who knows you a little bit and wanted to make things a little awkward. So
shoot.
We're going to start with this one. Who does Jack Johnson remind you of?
What?
Exactly.
I'm supposed to know this person?
Yeah, I don't think.
If this is a planted question by one of your former guests named JD Lewis, is it really? Is it?
Yeah. That's impressive.
Me and JD back as a freshman couldn't drive, but JD, I have not seen JD in a long time, but this is cool that it's all coming back. He would be my little chauffeur, and I remember very vividly getting turned on to Jack Johnson from him. I think he had like a little Durango. So if he listens to this, good times, good memories.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's amazing that you were able to grab that.
I had to think through, like, somebody's got to, I had to think back, but I pulled it out.
So tell me this, how did you hear about Man Games? How was that pitched to you? How did that come about?
I have a younger brother, Jordy, who participated last year, and I kid you not, for a year straight, he wouldn't stop talking about it. Nice. So I was fortunate to hear from him, get the call, right?
Mm-hmm.
They needed to bring in the big guns, which I don't know what that means. But anyways, through my brother, and he had such great things to say about it. And obviously, having now experienced it myself, can't wait to get into it next year and invite more people.
That's awesome. You have a very sporty family. I mean, how many siblings do you have?
There are 4 of us, an older brother, sister, myself, and then a younger brother.
And I know Jackson, and now I know Jordy and you, obviously. Was your sister into sports as well?
She played volleyball at Jordan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So growing up in a sports household, what have sports done for you? Like, what role have they played for you in your life?
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to probably say everything. I think a lot of what success looks like in today's life, for me at least, right? I can go back and pick out different things that have happened along that way that have helped from a leadership perspective, a teamwork perspective, how you communicate. So it's easy to say everything, but the honest answer, it might be everything to be true. be truthful.
Who are let's say 3 of your favorite teammates? Any age group, any
3 of my favorite teammates. Are we talking high school, little league, college?
You can pick the whole gamut of your athletic experience.
Oh my goodness.
Narrow it down to 3.
Pass me the ball. We could go with
there
that,
you go.
Right?
3 that you, how about this? 3 that you would bring to man games that weren't on your team this time.
Oh, now that's tough. Parker's fresh, top of mind.
Mhm.
I think I'd bring Parker Walbeck. You need to get him on this podcast.
Yeah.
He could come to man games. One of my favorite events was golfing, and I know there's a certain someone named Preston Richards. Got to get him out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm handpicking my team now.
All right.
Not that they were my favorite teammates; those were not good teammates. But I'm trying to win man games next year. I'd probably get in trouble by singling anybody else, but a lot of good teammates. Some that I'm still very close with. So if we're playing volleyball, I might have to bring up my friend Ben Aird. Played at Bountiful, played at UVU.
Yeah.
Still really close with him. He'd probably be upset if I didn't talk about him. So there you go. Those
That's
are my 3.
awesome. Let me ask you this too about that transition from high school sports to college, because you played at UVU. What is something that, for those who just played high school or rec leagues or whatever, what is it they don't understand about that transition into college athletics?
That's a good question. I'd probably go off on a lot of it. To me, is very hard. I think sometimes what people don't realize is it's really kind of like a full-time job, and if you're not the quote-unquote superstar, it's taxing. It's hard, and I was not the superstar. Let's just get that out of the way. But when you have so many different workouts in the off season, pairing that with study hall, pairing that with community service, which we did a lot of. It was like a full-time job, and then strength and conditioning aside from your on-court activities. So I had a great college experience, meaning I met my wife, and that will trump everything happened to over college athletics. But by the time I was done, I played 4 years, and by the time it was over, I was ready for that 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Because in college, right, you don't have your holidays. I remember having like Thanksgiving dinner in hotels.
Mm-hmm.
I remember practicing on Christmas Day. And those were things that, like, man, I don't miss whatsoever. I love being able to enjoy evenings and weekends and holidays. So for those that are aspiring to go play, go for it. It'll be one of the greatest experiences, things that you'll learn and have to do hard things, but just know it's better after the fact, unless you're going pro.
Did you stay healthy through your college experience? Did you have any like injuries that plagued you at all?
Nothing too crazy. I missed a few games here and there with an ankle. An ankle a few times actually, but other than that, pretty healthy.
Who was your coach?
Dick Hunsaker.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
sweet.
Yeah. The infamous Dick Hunsaker.
Dick Hunsaker. That's awesome, dude. I mean, I look at like the high level athletes. Let's talk like NBA, right? And you talk Kawhi Leonard gets you injured or whatever. And when you're playing at a higher level than what the most of us are used to, it seems like that strength and conditioning, like every part of your body has to be at like 100% for you to do max output, because the other team will find what's weak. They'll find a weakness and then they'll just go after it over and over again.
You know, it's interesting. I didn't play that much. Like, for those listening, I'm sure you're searching now the
highlight reels.
Don't look for any highlight reels. You may not find them, but just being like a reserve, limited use player, I remember like it was taxing on myself, and I oftentimes thought back at those guys that are playing, 35 plus minutes a game in games that, 2 games over the course of 2 or 3 days. I'm like, man, what does that feel like? Because I wasn't there, but yeah, to then think and span that over, thinking of the NBA, an 82 game schedule, like, I don't know how they do it, but
yeah,
I'm sure I could figure it out if I was getting paid that much.
Oh, yeah, for sure. With you coming in and kind of being that specialist of sorts, is there more pressure in that, okay, I have this many minutes a game, like I have to do my job or else I'm going to get even fewer minutes? Does that make sense? Like, is there a lot added pressure to just come in and perform like that?
Yeah, because if you look at high school, right, I had green light, do whatever you want. You knew you're going to be playing. And And I think this is interesting. I don't know if I should share this, but I felt like I was a better basketball player as a freshman in high school than I was as a graduating senior in college.
Really?
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But in college, obviously different schemes, different skill sets. And as a freshman in high school and all throughout high school, I was just a shooter, right? And I don't know how well I developed into a basketball player aside from having a 3-point shot. And I'm very much man enough to admit that. But in college, what was unique is the only way I would get on the floor is just sparing somebody or playing defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like I'd become obviously a better defensive player, making sure I didn't screw up, because as soon as I screwed up, I was out,
Yeah.
So I put pressure on. But like I said, great experience, just totally different experience than what I thought it'd be going in. But as is life, different life experiences, different things, different outcomes. But definitely learned and was able to kind of take some of those things and apply it post career.
While you were playing, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do after college? You said that when you were done with the basketball, you were ready for that 9-to-5 concept. Did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Oh, does anybody? I thought, yeah, something in business.
Mm-hmm.
I served a mission in Brazil and thought, oh yeah, I'll go do something big in Brazil. And then obviously that didn't happen, but something business related. I loved, I think relationships, people talking, I'm on a podcast talking about myself. So something sales related. My dad was in sales, brothers in sales. And so I thought that might be a place for me, but didn't know what I know today.
Yeah. How do you balance that as you're wrapping up your college career and okay, because I'm assuming, did you work in the summers or college, or because with that time commitment, you weren't able to?
Really wasn't able to a whole lot, as much as I would have liked to. I feel like I obviously very blessed, right? Shout out to all the walk-ons, because without the scholarship, it'd have been very hard, right? From a time commitment and then being able to have to pay for tuition or books, right?
Yeah.
I was fortunate. I got married at the end of my sophomore year, and my wife and I lived with her parents very close by to school. So not only were we living rent-free close to school, my wife was working. So I was one of the fortunate ones getting school paid for, having her work, living rent-free. So it set us up quite nice post-college.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really able to work that much, just with different things going on. I did, however, have a job at a golf course, which I'm sure we might get into a little bit. But I was able to work some hours at Sleepy Ridge and kind of got my first experience into working on a golf course.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was there that switch of okay, now I have a wife I have to provide for, we will eventually have a family, here we go, right? What was was that your first job out of college, or was that?
Yeah, I mean, I had some part-time, everybody's got their little part-time things here, but I'd never had a real full-time job until right after college. And so after college, leaning on my brother who'd been in sales, he works for the Jazz, had done different corporate developments for the Jazz and had some connections. And I got lined up at was then InsideSales.com as just the lowly BDR. So yeah, that was my first job. Loved it. And obviously from there, it's been a 10-year career.
So you're in sales, and I want to get into that transition in careers, because something relatively recent has changed in your careers. Take me through the corporate America jobs that you went through, right? Because those are going to be sales, those are going to be tech companies. What is that experience like that, again, people who aren't in it don't really understand?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of tech, and I think here in our state there's so many companies, there's so many opportunities, and I was in it, and I saw kind of as it kind of fueled you through athletics, right? I was competitive, and if you're familiar in the tech scene, account development, business development, basically you're the setter for the closers, the big dogs, And I looked up to a lot of those people, and I remember wanting to get to the top, right? I wanted to be the guy making the big commission checks. And so I think that kind of fueled me very early on to where, speaking of that first job, I would get to work about 6:30 just to try and be the first person there. Just as leads would come in through the night, being able to be the first person to reach out, contact them, get comp for setting up or teeing up a little lowly opportunity, and for those in tech, they'll know what I'm saying. But that was fun. From there, was there only a few months actually when another opportunity came about with a company called Nuvi, social media analytics. Was there for almost 5 years, and it kind of climbed through the ranks as an account executive all the way up until VP of sales. And what's interesting, not that I need to share it, but I learned, you learn lessons along the way, right? As an individual contributor, you love and you can kind of control what you control. And I love that aspect of it. And that last position there, taking ownership of other people, kind of like, it was not good. I don't know how much I liked managing others, right? Butts and seats, that type of mentality. And anyways, that kind of led me to pursue other things. There was some people there that I wasn't so fond of. And like I said, actually, I think we were recording, but I mentioned to you previously, anywhere you go, you encounter different people. There's relationships that you develop, and some of them are great. Some of them are not so great, but you can learn from that. And I think I learned that I wanted to control a lot of the things that I can control, right? And take how I was managed and do the exact opposite in any other future opportunities. And so from there, went to Divvy. Some of those that are listening might know that company that was acquired from Bill. And again, another company that I was with very early on as I think like the 5th sales rep, from a pre-Series A all the way up until a I believe it was $2.5 billion acquisition.
Wow.
So I was there and had a good time. But obviously from that experience, it kind of led into the turf business. And I don't know if that's where we're transitioning, but great opportunity. I think in any business sense, you meet people and those relationships you have for a long time. And obviously some of the greatest people I know, I met while at Divvy, as well as those other companies.
Well, I kind of want to circle back to one of our original questions. And if you were to build a dream team business-wise now, so who are some of your favorite teammates that you've had professionally at this point, for various reasons, right? Whether they're a good team player, whether they're a good leader.
Yeah, I'm showing way too much love to Ben Aird. If he sees this, he's in trouble. But loved working with Ben. A lot of the things that we learned on the court, we could take into the business world. Another former athlete, he played defensive end at the University of Utah, Christian Cox. Both of those two are very successful to this day. I think about a lot of the people I was competing against at Divvy.
Meaning like your other account executives who are still on your team.
But yeah. So you're in teams. You're in so many ways competing to land top accounts, all those things. Jordan Mulford, if he's listening, you're lucky. I still kind of talk with him and compete in different ways today. But there's so many good people, and but obviously you want to see yourself at the top, and those were the people that were right at the top.
That's awesome. Well, I want to sprinkle in a random one before we move on to the next phase of your life, because we got to get through some of these. Let's pick one that actually makes sense here.
I'm surprised that there were some questions.
There's some good ones. There's again, these are totally random, so it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. What animal would be the rudest if it could speak?
Next.
What? Hot dog fingers or broccoli feet?
A fan of broccoli, so let's go with broccoli.
All right. This will be the last weird one before we move on. But craziest 3 items to buy together to confuse a grocery store employee.
I gotta look at this following and who's following this account. Where do they come up with these questions?
Yeah, it's true.
The 3 what?
Okay, what are the craziest 3 items to buy together to confuse a grocery store employee?
Oh, sometimes I do think, what you look at when you're going up to the register and you're like, what is this? What is the register? Like, are they judging me?
Sometimes I feel like I have to apologize. Like, I'm sorry, this isn't for me. Like,
and then you as yourself, you're standing in line and you're looking at what some other person's bought, and you're like, you're comparing yourself to them. So, okay, I can appreciate the question. It's a good one, but I don't know if I have an answer. I don't know if we have enough time. I could think about it, but that definitely caught me off guard.
All right. Yeah. Again, there's no
But
responsibility.
in the comments, if you're listening, let's hear what you have to say.
There you go. All right. So it sounds like you have a very success at this point after your career. You're growing. You're doing well. You have a successful job at a successful company that has just been acquired. You say they were acquired while you were there?
That's right. Yep.
And being that you were so early, I'm assuming that you had some sort of potential shares in this, or no?
I had some.
Okay.
Some.
So now a non-corporate opportunity falls into your lap. Tell me how that happened?
Yeah, again, doing turf today, but it all kind of comes back to like what had happened previously. And I believe, man of faith, right? I believe things happen for a reason. But going back to the experience at Divvy, one of the things that they tell you in tech is, when you're issued options, right, or when they're selling you the Kool-Aid, as I like to say it, right, they tell you to keep those close to the vest, right, keep them to you. And because I'd been there so early and had been doing well, I guess I was naive, right, but I don't think I had any reason to believe that I wouldn't be taken care of, right. I was kind of like heads down, we're building, we're having fun. I was making a decent amount of money. And anyway, so during that time period at Divvy, I saw myself basically in the tech world for a long time. Great career, obviously in Utah, plentiful of opportunities. And so not that there's anything wrong with that, but I saw a long, what's a good adjective? A long career doing tech, right?
Yeah.
And I was fine with that. Everything was good in life. And then things were rolling, Divvy's growing, all the way up until the acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
And COVID had happened. And we had the choice. This is early 2021, and they announced, "Hey, we're being acquired." And I was at home, but they're telling everybody, "Hey, get in. We're gonna have a big celebratory party, all these things." And I was like, "Sure, let's do it." And what you would think would be like one of the greatest days of your career, maybe even your life, I'll never forget is probably one of the worst days of my life. And those close to me know the story, but when I got in there, what was so unique is people just start talking. Hey, I had this many options. I had this, I had that. And some people could probably relate to this, but I remember seeing like a lowly BDR manager had been there 2 months, and I'd been there almost 5 years, spitting off some numbers as to how many options they had and really my heart just sunk, knowing that like, wow, I am not making any money that compared to this person or that person.
Yeah.
And I was genuinely just heartbroken.
Yeah.
And with trials or whatever happens, you have a choice of perhaps how you react to that situation. And I knew things were brewing altogether. But one thing that has never left, and I told myself that day, is I'll never work that hard ever for anyone ever again.
Yeah.
That doesn't directly benefit me in a way. And so while I was at Divvy, obviously it's still COVID, right? We're at home. And I remember a friend of mine he got a putting green installed at his house. And I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And for me, somewhat as like a therapeutic motive, I love to just throw balls out in my backyard, and I just like to chip, right? It's just something easy. I love green landscape, all the things. And so when I saw this buddy of mine, I was like, yeah, I'm kind of coveting right here. I want one of these, you know? And anyways, I tried finding online different companies that might do it. And I was having some trouble. And then randomly one day I was on KSL and I saw these pictures, no website, no social media. So like against my intuition, I was like, do I reach out to this guy? You know, like those who have had experiences with KSL. But anyways, I called this guy. He picked up, great conversation, came out the next day and showed me these samples along with his installer, and they just started spitting things about turf. And I was like, this is so cool. Sign me up. Let's do it. And so they started doing my putting green. Obviously, I'm still at home working from home. And two thoughts came to mind. One was, wow, this is better than I even thought, right? And the other thought was
better having a putting green, or the experience of it.
This looks better than I could have even imagined.
Like the quality of it was.
Yep. Yeah. And I was just like, this is just art right in my backyard.
Yeah.
So excited to get out there. But the second thought was, wow, that didn't take too much time and I know how much I just paid for it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I was intrigued immediately. I was like, I mean, I watched him, like maybe I could do it, even though full disclosure, I can't, right?
Yeah.
But I told my wife, you know, because obviously you have a little money or you're growing, like, hey, side hustles, you know, doing this or that. And I said, hey, maybe we should start a turf installation business, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me dead face. And if she listens to this is a true story. She's like, well, you're not that smart. Why don't you just call the owner? True story.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, oh, maybe we could help like Utah County get a website up, just because he was doing it on the side as well.
Yeah.
And so we start talking, and then one day out of the blue, he's like, well, hey, Taylor, what do you think about buying the business? And this business happened to be called Elite Turf Supply. And I was like, oh, shoot. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe, you know, like not knowing really what to say, not having really ever considered myself an entrepreneur or had any prior experience to that. And so anyways, not knowing where to begin, and in my family, not having any other, you know, entrepreneurs there, but I have a brother-in-law, and my brother-in-law, along with his business partner, have a few different businesses, and he was the first person I thought of. And so I called him. I was like, hey, I got this opportunity, this and that. And, you know, would you be open to like telling me how to value a company or what it might be worth, this and that, you know? And he's like, yeah, let's sit down. And the more we started talking about it, the more everybody got more and more engaged into this particular opportunity. So myself, my brother-in-law, and his business partner together, we bought Elite Turf Supply. And at the time, Elite Turf Supply was kind of dabbling in two worlds, both as a artificial turf supplier, but also along with the business came our installer, who's still with us today, Tanner Brenneman, and I'm sure we'll have more good things to say about him. But we realized that there was much bigger opportunity in this, both in the opportunity to sell turf, right? We're all self-interested. We wanted to grow a business, but kind of just looking at the landscape of the state, incentives, the signs that point people towards turf. And so very quickly we saw that, hey, let's scale two businesses at the same time, both a supply company, and then we created out of that Turf Impressions, which is our install company. And from that, the rest is history. Had fun.
There's so much that I wanted to tackle on this because I mean, in our family, we've had a very similar concept of there is this, hey, here's an idea, and you start talking about it, you get more and more excited. There's going to be a big risk involved. And then when it comes time to actually make the decision, so often I think people chicken out in a way, right? Of like, but I have security, so maybe I'll put that off to another time. So was there that point of like, okay, are we going to do this or not? And then it's like, all right, we're going to do this. Here we go.
Yeah, I can really only speak and draw on like personal experience and how well it's been having partners. But to your point, like I know, and I don't know any statistics, but I think those listening or watching will know, like, yeah, a lot of startups don't succeed, right? Because of risks, capital, timing, just a lot of different things. And in this situation that I was getting into, I had two partners that were already successful in another venture. Financially, we all took the equal amount of risk, and but then timing's everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see your point, but part of what I think, you know, and then we're just under 2 years now having the turf company, but a lot of people ask like, oh, how do you do it? Or I want to do this. Or, I mean, for those that are, you know, I know a lot of people have considered, or I want a side hustle. They say these things, right? So much of that process is actually just doing it, right? And I don't pretend to be like the go-getter because, as I mentioned, I'd never been an entrepreneur. But now looking back, I kind of like, what took me so long? Because of everything that has happened, the things that I've experienced. And if I just look back to the last year and a half and look at myself in terms of how much I've grown, I mean, kind of kicking myself like, you should have done this a lot sooner. Not that the first time or second time, third time, whatever would have been successful, but for those that have gone out and tried something and failed even, you know, I'm not the motivational, you see all these videos on TikTok, right? You just got to try it, but there is truth to it, right?
Yeah.
You learn the most through failure, right? Or those things that you can take away and only make a better or more positive experience the next time. So shout out to those that have gone out, right? Have been the man in the arena, right?
Yeah.
because now having been in it or experienced highs and lows, right? I have a lot more respect for those that have actually gone out and tried, and perhaps even more respect for those who have failed,
Yeah.
because not everything is a home run.
Well, and why I think it's applicable too is as I learned more about what your business is, specifically Elite Turf Supply, is so much of this world lives off of this scarcity mindset of like, it all has to be mine and I want everything.
Yeah.
And my impression of Elite Turf Supply is like, look, there is a lot of business out there in the world. So let us help you build your own turf business. We will supply you with the turf, but we're going to help you make that leap now into build your own business. Like, let's be successful together. And yeah, you have your install company and you want to install as much as you can, but you also benefit if more entrepreneurs enter that space and grow. Am I understanding that right?
You're understanding it perfectly, and I appreciate the question, because a great mentor of mine, Mike Schreiner, always preached like a rising tide rises all ships, right? And there's some iterations of that, right? But what we're trying to do and where we saw that opportunity is when we first started, I would say there was, maybe 3 or 4 true turf installation companies in the state of Utah. Since we've gone forward with this, we've helped start, I think, about 12 independent turf install companies only, which I'm so proud of. And maybe even more proud of is kind of the way we're going about it. Because to your point, like in any trade, there's tips and tricks, and sometimes there's a secrecy behind it, or they want to, keep what is theirs, right? And I understand, right? You've built something up. Maybe there's a fear of sharing that somebody may come in and, put me out of business or whatever it may be. And I think we saw that pretty early on that, hey, there's not a whole lot of information you can find on how to install turf. There's very limited resources out there. And I think I totally get why now.
Yeah.
At the time I didn't, but we wanted to take the complete opposite approach, not only because, again, if we get more people onto turf, they're going to have to come buy from us, which is the obvious answer. But for me, and kind of following my entrepreneurial journey, like, we can help others succeed in this, right?
Yeah.
It's totally an abundance mindset over scarcity. I'll give you an example. Most turf installation companies are booked out 3 months in advance today.
Yeah.
You're telling me that there's not opportunity for others to get in and scale. And really what we're trying to do is just bring more people to turf, right? If you're seeing what's happening in the news with the recent state rebate, water conservation, people with pets that, don't want to have their dogs tear up their yard, or, it smells, those that want to enjoy their Saturdays and their lawns. So there's, like I said, just a number of different signs that point people towards turf. And aside from us installing it, we're trying to not wait for turf to come to Utah. More or less, we're trying to push it, right? And educate people on the benefits. Because every day I get asked, well, do you put rubber in it? Or they think in like their minds, like, is it that thin carpet stuff that was on my grandma's front doorstep? So I just laugh, because obviously the technology's come so far and there's so many different benefits with it. But yeah, there's a different approach to how we're bringing turf to Utah and other states.
Well, and I love it. And I think more competition is better for everyone in a sense, right? Because Warren Buffett says something to the effect of the low tide shows who's naked, right? And so if you're getting by just because I'm going to do crappy installs just because it's high demand, I think more competition means you have to up your game. And then who knows? I don't know what that space is like, but you might have entities that are like, look, we're going to specialize in putting greens, and we're going to make the putting greens the most realistic putting greens, and the regular lawn-looking turf isn't really what we do. But then there might be a specialty that does do that, and so they're going to innovate that space to make it better for everybody, regardless of what you want.
Yeah, we are constantly trying to, like, R&D, try new things. And to your point, like, there's so much opportunity in that turf space. I want to be specific to pets, or just putting greens, or pool areas, or front yards. Like, it's kind of fun, and having helped some of these people, some of them have actually like quit their full-time jobs and have gone all in on turf. And if that's not the most rewarding thing as an entrepreneur, I don't know what is, right?
Yeah.
Having a friend or an acquaintance come to you wanting to start their own business, and then it being their full-time gig.
Yeah.
So there's a plentiful plentiful. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of opportunity in the turf space.
What kind of support does Elite Turf Supply provide to the people you're supplying turf to? Is that something, because they've come to you now and they say, hey, I want to do this. Is it just a transactional, we want turf, give it to us? Are you able to provide more insights into like this turf does this better or worse, or how does that work?
I mean, like I mentioned, to date helped a number of different companies get into it without any prior, let's say, blue collar type of work, right?
Yeah.
And so from us, in terms of what I've already shared, like we're trying to give. So in-house, we have people that have actually been installers.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as Elite Turf Supply, we're a resource. So if you're buying from us, if you're utilizing us, I have some guys that actually, even today, a buddy of mine in the tech space started his new company. Today they did their first job. This is a true story.
Awesome.
And my sales guy who installed for a number of years went out and helped them do their first job. So I think for anybody that's interested in starting specifically a turf installation company, there's not as much stress going into it, knowing that, hey, if you land a job, we're going to help you do it. Make sure that it's done the right way. And ultimately, if we can teach you or coach you how to do it the right way, you're more than likely going to land more jobs. And again, if you're landing more jobs, what does that mean for us? You're buying more material. So it's kind of like, giving, right? Give. Yeah. And if we're giving more than we'll receive, obviously we're probably going to receive more.
Yeah, I love that. And I would have to bet that a lot of these guys, this first one that was today, as they're going to try and help a potential client, sell has this nasty word to it, but it is. It's like this, to help sell a client on what they are able to offer. They've got to be feeling some sort of an imposter syndrome of like, you aren't going to tell the client, hey, this is my first one, we'll see how it goes. And so to have somebody who's done it before, that's got to be such a huge relief of like, okay, we aren't just going to go show up, figure it out, take a lot longer than we needed to, have this poor experience. Do we have somebody there to help us along? I think that's awesome. I think that's a great,
having that confidence. Again, there's a lot of people just even recently that, hey, I'm interested. I want to do this. Right. And we've definitely spent more time than we should with some people looking to get into turf.
Mm-hmm.
But those that are showing the signs that are like, hey, I want to do this, they go out and buy the tools. Absolutely. We'll come out and help you, because again, if we can help you or invest that time, much like with any profession or relationship, you invest the right, time or talents into something, there's going to be a return. And so we see it that way. Even with our own installation company, some people ask me like, well, aren't you creating competition for your other company?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is, it's not really applicable, because like I said, a rising tide will raise all ships. And again, there's so many people that are looking for turf right now, and consumers are smart, right? If you're finishing a basement, if you're looking to get concrete poured, right, you're probably going to request or find a few different people for bids, right?
Yeah.
So again, if everybody's doing great work, it gives everybody an opportunity, and more people will just be, turned on to turf.
Well, and so my real job's in marketing. And so it's been so interesting to see over the last few years with the rise of not just social media, but also TikTok, is that if you have this idea of I want to do a putting green, or I want to do concrete or anything, people are running to TikTok. They're running to these things to see, okay, how can I do it myself? In my space, we do insurance for seniors, so Medicare. And our mindset has been, I'm going to tell you exactly how everything works. So we have a YouTube channel, and I was like, here's how it all works. Here's how much it's going to cost. Here's how these plans work. And as you do that, there was this fear of like, well, are people going to steal it? Are people going to think that we're not valuable? And it's been the exact opposite. They're like, this is so complicated and so hard. Please do it for me. And I feel like that's the same with turf, because I looked into like, okay, how can I install my own putting green? Here, what is it going to take? And I was just like, oof. Like, for me to do it myself, I'm not handy. I'm not good at that kind of stuff. No, I'm not. And so like, for me, the more I learn about it, the more I want to reach out to a company that's professional about it and have, hey, will you do this for me? Because I'm going to mess it up twice, and then I'm going to call you anyway to come fix it. So,
yeah, I am not that person either, right? That's why I made the call. But there is that group out there, and like I tell people all the time, because there is a number of a decent amount of like DIYers that come through our showroom and want to attempt these. And I've seen some great, beautiful work. Someone did a full soccer field just by himself.
That's awesome.
And I admire those types of people that are good with their hands. But like with any trade, right, any skill, I think in this particular field of artificial turf, for the complex jobs, maybe putting green, yeah, maybe you want to get that right, hire a professional, but it may not be as hard as you think. And that's what another component of what we're trying to do, promoting through YouTube of our Instagram is, looking at these things is to like, hey, this is how you do it. Let's just go slow.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised. I bet if you tried, you might like the end result.
Okay, you did bring up a lot of stuff, and I'm sorry, like I genuinely am interested in like artificial turf, so I have so many questions around this. So I'm going to kind of sabotage this whole thing and just talk about it for a while. But as you noticed, we have dogs.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how turf interacts with dogs. And you talked about like digging up the yard. You saw a couple holes in my yard where one of our dogs is digging right now.
Yeah.
Will they go after turf in a similar way, or is that they're just a little bit more laying off of that stuff? How do dogs interact or other pets with turf?
Yeah, I should have probably pulled the statistics, but I want to say like maybe 6, maybe 7 out of 10 jobs that we're installing involve a pet, right? And so much of the interest that's coming our way are those with pets, and maybe a number of different other reasons. But the thing with pets, especially in Utah's landscape, some people don't have large yards, right? Which means there's not a ton of room for dogs to go, and so they consequently start tearing up the yard. If they pee in the yard, it's going to kill the grass, and so looking for alternatives, turf is a great option, given that the way it's installed with the base underneath your turf. And I apologize if I geek out.
Dude, let's do this. I'm so excited.
No, but a proper install for the homeowner is what you actually can't see, right? It's what goes underneath your turf, and that's what you put on top of your turf. And so what's so appealing about artificial turf is that not only can it drain, but there's a material called infill that we use, and it's a specific type of one that will essentially eliminate the odors. So it allows for a dog to go to the bathroom on the turf and allow for the urine to pass through without leaving a smell. So tips and tricks along the way to help with that. But as far as like them tearing it out or tearing at it, once they realize very quickly that they can't get through that, they get what's called hot paw. So I'm fairly confident in saying you're not going to get your turf torn up by your dogs.
Nice. What about for more solid waste? Like, what does cleaning off turf look like?
That's the follow-up question. So, yeah, unfortunately, can't help you with number 2 in the case of it being more of a wet one. The cool thing about turf, given that it's permeable, it will drain. In those instances, just take a hose and flush it through. Yeah, or do your best to clean it up. Nice. There are other different sprays that can help with it, but more often than not, a simple hose will do just fine.
Awesome. Caring for it. So the president of our company has some turf grass at his home, and he has almost like I don't even know what to call it. It's like a lawnmower, but a broom.
Yeah.
Like, is that what is the best way to clean these things off? Like more of a deep clean yourself, or how does that all work?
A few different things that you can do. Every year I like to do what I call like a little freshen up. So these power brooms, they have like stiff bristles at the end. And so when you go to do an install, right, you apply that infill, which is kind of like a sand-like material, and you go against those blades to allow the infill to sink and settle to support those blades. But after a year like this, right, we had lots of snowpack, a lot of times what people like to do is the little freshen up. And so you can take that broom and kind of freshen up those blades, or even apply a little bit more infill, and it'll look like it was just installed.
That's awesome.
It's kind of cool.
How does that drainage work with large snow? I mean, we had a lot of snow, heavy rains. Is that something that eventually will start to create little pockets of things washing out, and that you have to just do more infill, or what is that? These are just my questions.
Yeah,
like,
those are great questions.
About installing
we should have like prepped a commonly asked questions, because that is one. But the answer, and we always go back to when properly installed.
Yeah.
The fortunate but maybe unfortunate thing that we experience in our space is sometimes just a lack of education. Some people will just put turf right on top of their soil, right, which can lead to, or maybe some of the misconceptions or the negative connotations that people have with turf is, oh, it stinks, or it bubbles up. If I were to go and pull back the hood a little bit to see what's underneath or what's on top, you'd probably find that it was an improper install. So we want to make sure that you're having at least 4 inches of a compactable hard pack or a base underneath. And if that's the case and you have the right amount of infill, then you won't have any of those issues. So again, geeking out a little bit. Press fast forward or speed it up if you're still listening. So,
well, again, another question I have is like the longevity of this, of how long should I expect this to look and function how I want to? This is going to be specifically a putting green, but I think it applies to non-putting greens too.
Absolutely.
What does that longevity look like?
So the turf that we have has a 16-year warranty on it. But again, the lifespan, if you have that, like we said, what's the appropriate amount of base underneath, what goes on top, there's no reason that your turf shouldn't go 20, 25 years.
Nice. Yeah, that's sweet. Talk to me about I know in Utah it was recently passed, these rebates. Like, how do those work? Who do they work for? How do you get them? What does that look like?
Yeah, I wish we had more involvement with it. Unfortunately, we don't. But to help further the conversation, what the state has done is a $3 up to $3 per square foot, kind of like a replacement of your existing grass. Again, I think we all know that the state's making an effort to reduce the amount of water that's used, and obviously residential yards is a big waster of water, if you put it that way. So there's different things that you can do. I don't know if you want to link like the Utah Water Savers or where people can go to apply. Not to say there's hoops, but obviously we want as many people to apply. There's certain things that you have, just different guidelines that you have to meet in order to meet that criteria to get the $3. But again, if I'm a DIYer considering turf, to share here on the show, rough material cost from us to get all of the materials needed for a DIY project is roughly around like $4 maybe. So thinking or putting it in that context, you're almost getting your yard turfed for almost free if you're doing it yourself. But again, those $3 can help on an installation as well.
Yeah, and that's per square foot.
Per square foot, yes.
Right. And I'm assuming, again, I haven't read into this, but I'm assuming that it's going to be something around like you're replacing, what is the word, irrigable grass, or is it like if I'm replacing
xeriscape, right? Or drought resistant landscaping. There's some terms in there. Artificial grass is included in that, but there are different alternatives that you can use that would apply that get you the rebate. But obviously we're here promoting turf, so let's go turf.
Yeah. Is that $4 per square foot? Is that just the turf cost, or does that include base? Does that the base layers and the infill?
Roughly everything except the base material. We're not like a rock quarry, so unfortunately you have to order that or go pick that up. But from the turf and other materials such as like your glue, your nails, infill, we supply all that, and that would be covered in that cost.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Now I am thinking about doing some of it DIY, not the putting green. I don't want to do the putting green.
Convince Eric to DIY.
Yeah. But that was the thing too, because when I had your guy come out and quote for the putting green, he was like, "Look, I appreciated the fact, and then you too, as you've been out there, of like, hey, let's do it this certain way, and here's why." Is they come in these 15-foot rolls, right? And so he's like, in the middle of your green, you don't want seams, theoretically. Again, I know there's ways around that for these massive greens you see, but just that direction was helpful. But what other things do people need to think about when installing turf?
How much time do we have? No, there's like I said, just tips and tricks. Turf is directional. So again, as we think about how we would do your yard or how we would do anybody's yard, there's a way in which we lay it, right? Or we want the turf facing. In all of our turfs, there's a thatch layer, so it looks real as you get into or as you look into your turf. So the way that you lay it, the way that you install it, there's a number of different ways that can be done. But I would say for anybody considering, let's explore it. You can come in, see us. We'll talk through it, see if you have what it takes, which I would think you do. But let us be your resource. And so obviously accounting for waste, no perfect yard is 15 by whatever we need it. So understanding how to perhaps seam the turf or cut it to fit against your curbing or whatever. But those are all things that we handle and talk through on a day-to-day basis with people coming to see us. So if it's not in the budget to have us install it, let's talk about having you do it yourself.
That's awesome. Utah, do you serve any other states?
We do. Primarily getting off the ground and kind of capturing all that we can in Utah. We do have some dealers in Idaho, and there's future plans to expand upon that.
All right. Anything else about turf that we should know about?
I think the listeners are probably like, all right, enough. Or if they're still listening.
I can promise you.
Hi, Mom, if you're still watching.
I can promise you a couple of things. I can promise you that those who are listening have thought about a putting green at least.
Okay. Yes.
I have a buddy who has thought about like a miniature baseball field in his yard, right? Where it's just like a little turf, maybe the infield, not the entire thing.
Yep.
I know that I have several people that have pets that have thought about what we have talked about. And then in the other side, I know that there's several people that have thought about, hey, I want to go do my own thing. I want to get away from clocking in, clocking out, doing all this work for somebody else. So that much appreciated. I guarantee you that there are people who are going to appreciate that.
Yeah, I actually think so too. So
let's get another random question for you, though.
Oh, boy.
Do you get mad when people ask you how tall you are?
I don't.
And then same person, not a question. I'm happy when I see tall people get on planes. Just wanted you to know. So.
Shout out to the exit row, right? That's the key to just being tall, is making sure you get on early and you get that exit row, or at least go walk up to the agent. Just guilt them.
It's awesome. What is the weirdest thing a guest has done in your house? You don't have to name names.
Oh, I don't know if it's weird, but maybe appreciated. Like, I have in-laws that like change out the vents, right? Like, so while some may consider it weird, I consider it looking after your son-in-law who's incompetent in so many ways. Home improvement. So fixing things, but I appreciate it. So maybe
That's
getting
awesome.
some things fixed around the house.
All right, I want to dive a little bit more into who you are, if that's all right.
Sure.
You mentioned that you met your wife at college. Take me through that story. How did you meet?
Do we want the story she would tell? And do you want the
Let's
real
get your
story?
version. Let's get your
Okay.
version first.
Oh, she might kill me, but anyways, I served mission. I'm back at UVU playing, and Facebook's still around. That was primarily just the only social site there. I did come across her profile. Back in the day there, and I think it's still around, but like they would find suggestions of like people you may know.
Yeah.
For those listening, my wife actually shares the same last name as me.
Huh?
So her name is Courtney Brown. And I think what immediately kind of took me back is her name. And you start to, you funnel through and you start seeing the same names over and over. And this was kind of like the first time. And I was like, what? So yes, I did shoot her a DM. For sake of embarrassment, I will spare you what I said. Just know I have no game. But anyways, we talked.
Was it something like, hey, we should
Hey,
hook up?
No.
You don't even have to change your last name if we got married. Think of how convenient.
All right, I asked something along the lines of like, hey, are we cousins? Edit that out. But anyways, we were both pretty shy, and I said, hey, here's my number if you want to hit me up. And she said, no, here's my number, and then it just stopped. But again,
Stopped
going back,
because you didn't reach out again, or
Yeah, I
stopped
didn't talk
because
to her.
she's ghosting you?
But it was about maybe a week later. Like I mentioned before, like with basketball, we do a lot of community service. We do a lot of caroling. I don't know why, but during Christmas break.
Are you going to give us a demo?
No. But the cool part is we were meeting at the school to go carol in some classes or whatnot. And it had been, like I said, probably about a week. But anyways, I'm walking through, and those are familiar with UVU. There's the bookstore right there. And I was walking, and we made eye contact. She was working in the bookstore. But for about an entire semester walking through those halls, I never saw her ever. But, as fate would have it, we made eye contact, but guess what? I just kept walking, right? Like a very shy and incompetent man. But anyways.
Because you were nervous?
I was nervous.
Like you wanted to talk to her, but you were just scared?
Not that I was surprised, to put it very lightly, but
you knew who she was.
I knew who she was, and I knew she knew who I was.
Okay.
Because we had talked on Facebook for a second.
Yeah.
And so for the rest of the half hour, 45 minutes, I was just like, what do I do? What do I do? How am I going to work up enough courage to go back and talk to her? And the good news, guys, is yes, I did build up enough courage. I went back, talked to her. I was with a teammate, and she jokingly was like, whoa, are you going to sing me a song? And I was like, haha. My teammate actually very awkwardly sang Silent Night.
All right.
And I thought it might have been over, but fortunately she thought I was okay, and the rest was history. So she would say we met at the bookstore, but there's that first part of the story that involves a DM. But so both stories are true. We did meet at the bookstore officially, unannounced, but I like the Facebook story a little bit.
When did you know you were going to marry her?
Pretty shortly. I have to say it kind of evolved quickly. I didn't date really anybody after my mission. And I know she doesn't like that story. But for me, I kind of knew that she was the one. And then again, I think as most people would agree, things just kind of happen for a reason. And she and I hit it off, and 10, almost 11 years later, 3 kids, and we're still going.
How did you propose?
I proposed at the Gardens at Thanksgiving Point, thinking or tricking her that we were going to a wedding reception and going through the Gardens. And then when we got to that point, if you're familiar, if you've ever gone to like a Luminaria, at the very top, you look down. And so dropped it right there. Our families were there, and family's important. So I knew I wanted to do it with families. And that's how I did it.
That's awesome, man. We are a day removed from Mother's Day. You said you have some kids. So how old are your kids?
I have a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and one that just turned 1.
All right.
3 boys.
How did having kids change your mindset on life?
I think maybe the word like intentional comes to mind. Having a why behind all those things that I do, right? And I don't think, having a why, like I think there's always been a why, but I think it might have been like more magnified with kids and having a wife, meaning time is now shared, and it can be in some ways a lot harder for those that have kids, know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But also in the greatest way, more fulfilling. Like I said, I sports was so much of my life up until I was, 22, 23 years old, right?
Yeah.
And I was fine with that, but I could say like now being removed from that and doing what I'm doing now and being able to go home, like I joke about like getting the call around like 3:30, 4 o'clock. Hey, where are you? But if I'm being honest with myself, I can't wait for it. Right.
Yeah.
So many good things that happen during the day can't be replaced with what happens at 4 or 5 o'clock with kids practices. Like coming here tonight, I just left a kids practice, but before that, we were out just playing. All my three kids, my wife, we were playing just catch.
Yeah.
And to me, there's nothing better than that. I'll never, ever, ever deny playing catch with my son.
Yeah.
Ever.
That's awesome. We just had a baseball game tonight too. It's the best, man. And like my 8-year-old is so hard on himself, right? And that's something that he's kind of a perfectionist, and I was too growing up. And he's doing amazing things, right? And especially for his age. And you just see him come off, and it just kind of takes me back to when I was 8. I was like, yeah, I remember being mad when I did 9 things right but 1 thing wrong. And it's such an interesting, I don't know, mental shift, I think. But kind of coming back full circle, what of the lessons that you learned through sports that were such a big part of your life, which of those are you taking and applying to your profession and your family?
Yeah, probably what happened in college. I think I've been blessed, right? I had a lot of tools that were just kind of given to me. So throughout elementary, middle school, high school, I think a lot of things came easy, and in some ways kind of set me back in some ways not. But I think what happened in college is obviously things did not go my way. I think like when I was a freshman in high school, I thought I was, can't swear on this, but I thought I was it.
Yeah.
Like different schools coming to watch me play in an open gym, right? And I think I know what I was thinking. I thought I was first ticket right to BYU. That's where I wanted to go, right? Hometown kid, grew up going to games, and that's what I just had my sights on. But I mentioned before, like I thought I had it in the bag, right? I thought I'd keep growing maybe. But I learned that obviously I didn't do a lot of things that I could have done better, right? In terms of if we're applying it to sports, developing other parts of my game, right?
Yeah.
Still got a scholarship, right? Good for me. But in college, obviously, there's another set of challenges that I was faced with. One, not being the guy, and having not developed other parts of my game that really kind of put me back, right? I can be honest about it. And so from there, just different things to apply. Like obviously things don't always go your way, but they always happen for a reason.
Yeah.
That I'm fully convinced of, know wholeheartedly that, again, whatever you're doing, as long as you're trying to do your best, you show up. Again, and so much about life is hard.
Yeah.
So hard. And no one can be perfect. But I have a lot of admiration, and in some ways I'm proud of myself, again, for for showing up, trying your best. And again, if at the end of the day, the month, quarter, the year, you're left feeling at peace with what you've done, again, everybody could do more, but just with that feeling that you're trying your best, I can live with that. But again, drawing on past experiences, just trying to get ahead of things, see things out more, and really taking to heart some of the things that I can control to better myself, for me personally, for my family, those that I am close to or have responsibility for. So just little things like that. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah. What is something that you're working on personally right now?
So different things that are going on with work. And again, now being an owner, there's people that you're responsible for. And some things like I've really taken to heart that I really believe in is like showing up for those people, right? Not taking the approach like, oh, I have employees, they work for me, but the complete opposite, meaning I truly feel like I need to, work for them, show up for them, right? Because if I do that and they're happy, they're fulfilled, taking that into the family aspect, if I'm taking care of them, then ultimately it's going to benefit me. And so that's something I think about a lot, trying my very best to apply is taking care of those around me, more of that giving mentality. And again, part of the whole business thing, full circle about giving, try to apply that on a personal level. Not perfect. Let's remember, not perfect, working on it, like you said. But taking that approach is something that I think about daily.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm struggling with right now, specifically professionally, is my whole life, whether it was sports or now professionally, is if there's a hole, like I'll go do it, right? If like work-wise, I'll just do it rather than teaching somebody how to do it. I'll just do it because I know how I want it.
Yep.
Now that you are a business owner and you have employees, is there, again, I'm not saying you do it perfectly, but how have you delegated in a way? How have you learned to delegate? Because you mentioned that in your past too. If you liked, you liked owning it, you liked being able to own it, and then once you had employees that you were over, it changed things. Well, now you're kind of back in a similar but different role.
Yeah, that past experience, hopefully doesn't contradict, right? As a manager and in that environment that I was in, it wasn't great, and the person above me was awful, and I'm happy to say he was awful. But that soured the experience of taking care of other people, right? But now in this position as an owner, having more control and perhaps like looking at the business and solving the problems that I want to solve, I care more deeply about what's going on for the business, for those around me. And it just makes it different. Like people are everything, right? For me and how I think, like I am nothing without the people that are in the office working with those new interested, turf installation companies.
Yeah.
I am nothing. I'm not the ones that are out in the 100-degree heat, with my back to the sun, installing that turf or carrying those 50-pound bags, right? And so again, it's a different approach. I feel like I've grown in that regard as to making sure that those people know that I'm aware, that I care, I have their best interest. And if I'm doing that, then all's going to work out.
That's awesome. Dude, you're a stud. As much as I didn't want you to be because of...
Oh,
it's so funny because I had this experience. I went to BYU and I live in Bingham boundaries right now. And I hated Bingham, even through all like Little League, the minors, Super League teams. We always played against like Sloan Baker and Somerville and all that stuff. I hated them. And then I go to college and I have an accounting class with one of the guys that went to Bingham. And we got put into like a group and stuff. And I was like, dang it. Like, you're a normal, nice person. And
where are you going with this? Was I one of those guys that you...
Well, for sure. Like, I didn't know you. Like, it's not... And I wasn't a trash talker and you weren't a trash talker. So even when we played against each other, I remember guarding you often. And it was just always like you... Like the Michael Jordan. Like, I need to take something personally. I need to make it up. And so I was like, I can't like this person. But again, through Man Games, through this, like, you're an awesome dude. And so that's why I really enjoy Man Games, is that there's the athletic and the competitive component of it. But really quickly you can learn, like, man, like, we're all just normal people with the same problems and the same frustrations and the same insecurities, and we can have a sports as an outlet. So that's what's fun.
Yeah, I think very similar to the way I felt. Like, growing up, you look at people like, oh, I hate that person, but then you just don't ever know what that person's really about, right? And you see that in like sports, professional, within your own neighborhood, right? Like people that you think are a little off their rocker or they're a little bit this way, but you get to know them. So anyways, I try to like keep that perspective, sharing that with my kids now that they're actively involved in sports. But for anybody, they could take that approach and the world might be a better place. Thanks to you, Eric.
No. I always end these podcasts with 3 questions. So one of them you've kind of already answered. Well, you have answered. So the first one is, who hasn't been to Man Games that needs to be there?
Okay, we got that one.
So we'll tag them. You
Okay.
got to work
We'll
your
get 'em.
magic. It was Parker, Preston, and Ben. Yeah.
Yep.
Number 2, who at this last Man Games would you want to see in that chair and learn more about them that you didn't know before?
I'm trying to think who we were competing with, because I might need to like turn, Man Games is pretty competitive, right? So
Mhm.
you start to look at the other teams, you're like, "Oh, I don't like that. So I might need to like think about the team.
Because you
What
quickly
was,
see like which teams are going to be your competition.
So his name was the professional bowler.
Reiner.
Reiner,
Mhm.
and I should know that he's texted me about a putting green, but he seems like he's got a very interesting story. Love to get him on, perhaps, but that'd be my. We were all in awe of his bowling, and again, all of us.
Dude, his jacket was,
I
or his
know.
shirt was awesome.
He showed up with the shirt, and we were like, "It's over."
His
So,
bowling bag had wheels. I was like, "Whoa! Like this
yeah,
is
or
legit."
he's like Larry Bird, like who's playing for second place? That's what it felt like. So,
I'm fortunate enough because his where he works at Capita, they do a lot with financial advising and social security help, and we're Medicare, so it's like we have a lot of crossover. We
Yeah.
share the same office spaces.
Very cool.
So he's a good dude. And the last question is, what does it mean to you to be a man?
Having listened and knowing that question's coming, not have my notes prepared. No, I think it kind of covers maybe some of the things that kind of were twinkled in here. I believe, well, one thing that wasn't discussed, but some of the men that I look up to and admire, I think some of the qualities that they have is them being a little bit vulnerable, right? And I don't mean that in like the insecure type of way, but in a positive way in terms of perhaps they're really good communicators. And I would say like prior to marrying my wife, I don't know how well of a communicator I was, and that's since changed, right? Maybe it was forced, but I really think what makes a man is being able to, again, being vulnerable, being authentic, but also being able to show up, right? Being intentional with those relationships, because again, relationships are everything.
Mm-hmm.
And being vulnerable in that regard allows you to have deeper connection or just have more meaningful interactions with people that are close to you, but also perhaps that aren't even. Maybe there's somebody listening today that has seen something, learned something, been inspired by something, and that has to do with perhaps me jumping on, sharing those things, right?
Yeah.
So in the best way possible, being vulnerable and also showing up. Again, so much of life, like I've mentioned, is hard. Maybe doing the right thing sometimes is hard. So I really believe in showing up, right? It's not always going to be perfect, but again, if you show up every day for your wife, for your kids, that is a very admirable thing in my mind.
Yeah.
So showing up, I think that's what makes a man.
I love it. And one thing that as I get older and I realize how precious time is and that vulnerability is, I hope that at least people that I admire in my life, there's no doubt in my mind how they feel about me, right? In terms of whether that's a parent, a spouse, whatever.
Yeah.
They aren't afraid to share how they feel about you. And so again, thank you for being you. Thank you for not just the attendance at Man Games, but for bringing everybody brings their own flavor, their own vibes, their own whatever to that event to make it what it is. And it wouldn't be successful if everybody brought these egos that made it miserable, and you didn't bring that ego. You were just great. And I say this on a lot of these, but I judge people really quickly on how they interact in a competitive sports environment. And we all want to win. But I was very impressed with you, your team, everybody that came around. So thank you. Thank you for spending the last however long we've been talking with me. And seriously, if there's anything that you need, Man Games for me is like a family. So we're here for you to help in any way that we can.
Thank you. This is Man Games. I think it's hard to think of something that is a better event that can bring people together. One thing that maybe people don't know is, again, aside from competing, we're able to connect. And so there's different relationships that have formed from that. So thank you, for putting that together, spearheading it, putting this together. Hopefully there's a lot of good that can come from it. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay. We will end her there.